Hello, today we are going to do an evidentiary analysis of the movie called Trial by Fire. It is a film based on the real-life case of Todd Cameron Willingham.
Before moving further, let us understand the significance of this movie. 1. It establishes the role of evidences in convicting or acquitting an accused. 2. Displays a real-life scenario where there was compromise of justice as a result of an unfair trial and failed appeals thereafter. 3. Shows execution of an innocent man if the principles of evidence law are not adhered by the court.
Now, going to the plot of the movie starts with the crime in question, that is arson. This is the story of a man named Todd Cameron Willingham. He had a family comprising of his wife Stacy, and his 3 beautiful infant daughters. On the fatal day of 31st of December, 1991, when his wife was away, Todd woke up to the cries of his daughter Amber and realized his house was on fire. He tried to save his 3 daughters inside that house but failed to do so, and none of them survived. The state of Texas charged him of arson and murder of his 3 infant daughters.
In the trial of Todd Cameron Willingham, the witnesses produced before the court are biased or prejudiced towards him. There is admission of irrelevant facts, false testimonies and non-scientific expert opinions as result of no cross-examination by his defense lawyer. Consequently, the jury convicts him and awards him death sentence against the pleas of innocence by Todd and his wife, Stacy. On his death row, he befriends an outsider, Elizabeth, who empathizes with his story and goes on the quest for uncovering the truth. After going through his trial transcripts and her personal investigation, she realizes that Johnny Webb, Todd's cellmate, was bribed to testify that Todd had confessed his crime in front of him. The other witnesses had either lied or had prejudices against Todd. Also, she consults a world-renowned fire expert, Dr. Hurst, who rules out any possibility of arson, thus proving his innocence.
Based on Dr. Hurst's report, which was a conclusive scientific proof of Todd's innocence, and also on developments regarding false testimonies, Elizabeth, along with a new lawyer, files every possible appeal for Todd's case. Unfortunately, all of them are rejected, and even the clemency petition for delaying the execution of Todd is rejected by the governor. Consequently, Todd, an innocent man, is executed using a lethal injection by the state of Texas after being prosecuted for 12 long years. Now, we are going to analyze the movie from the perspective of evidence law on the following 3 main grounds. Firstly, on admission of not so relevant facts and character witnesses due to lack of any cross-examination. Secondly, reliance on non-scientific expert opinions in deciding culpability of Todd. And finally, on admission as well as reliance on false testimonies in Todd's trial. The first rule of evidence is admission of relevant facts only. Hence, relevancy of facts followed by need of cross-examination is our first point of analysis. Let us consider the following 3 testimonies of Todd's trial. Firstly, Mr. Evans, a man who molested Stacy and was consequently beaten by Todd as a reaction to it, testifies that he was a violent man. Secondly, Mrs. King, a mere acquaintance, testifies that Todd and Stacy had regular fights and there were frequent instances of domestic violence. Lastly, Mr. Fogg, the investigator, comments on unemployed status and other not so relevant crime records of Todd. What were these 3 witnesses trying to prove? They were trying to prove that Todd was a violent, unemployed and frustrated man. Hence, he is an incompetent parent and also capable of killing his 3 infant daughters. These 3 witness testimonies were followed by Stacy's testimony, Todd's wife, who said that the fights and instances of Todd beating him were not unilateral as perceived by others. She clarified that even she had beaten him and they always had such dynamics. Furthermore, she conclusively tells the jury that he loved his daughters and was a responsible parent, if nothing else. Why the facts presented in the initial 3 testimonies were not so relevant facts. 1. These witnesses were prejudiced or interested witnesses. 2. Even if we consider it, the opinions and statements shared were not of the same transaction as that of the alleged crime, arson and murder of his 3 daughters. 3. Stacy, who was a main stakeholder in the case and mother of those 3 daughters opposed, testified in favor of Todd and claimed that he was a loving father. 4. There was no cross-examination of any character witnesses who testified against Todd, and hence their credibility was never even checked. The second point of evidentiary analysis in the trial is reliance on non-scientific expert opinions for Todd's conviction. The 2 expert opinions considered in the trial were of a fire investigator and a psychologist. Firstly, Mr. Vasquez, a fire investigator, testified in Todd's case that it was arson and not an accidental fire. Post-conviction of Todd, Dr. Hurst, a world-renowned fire expert, called out the investigator for such baseless scientific conclusions and made a report conclusively proving that it was an accidental fire, not arson. Secondly, Dr. Grann declared Todd to be an incurable psychopath without even meeting him once. Also, he demanded death penalty for him. While Todd was on death row, Dr. Grann was expelled from American Psychiatric Association for unethical conduct, as he had a record of testifying as an expert in 167 trials without even meeting the accused, and almost all which resulted in death sentences for the accused. Thus, these 2 expert opinions, which were given substantial weightage in deciding the conviction, was utterly baseless and lacked any authentic scientific reasoning. The last point of analysis is admission of false testimonies. After conviction of Todd, it was revealed that 2 major witnesses of the trial gave false testimonies in the court. Firstly, Johnny Webb, Todd's cellmate, was bribed by prosecution with money and reduced sentence to testify against Todd. Consequently, he testified that Todd had confessed his crime of arson and murder in front of him. After 12 years driven by guilt, he writes a letter accepting the same to the governor, but still, Todd's clemency is rejected because the then prosecution advocate was now the governor, thus leading to admission of a bribed witness. Secondly, Mrs. Barbie's testimony in court did not match the one given by her to police. Earlier, she had claimed that Todd was desperately trying to save his daughters but was unable to do so. While in the court, she testified that Todd was more concerned about his car and pretended to care for his daughters when the authorities arrived. Again, an inconsistent witness testimony was admitted against Todd without any cross-examination. The principles of evidence law guide a prudent man towards achieving justice. In the present case, the tenets of evidence law are overlooked in entirety, and thus, leading to miscarriage of justice altogether. Firstly, there was admission of facts and character witnesses which did not hold much relevance in the current case. Also, they were not part of the same transaction in the alleged crime. Secondly, there were no evidences produced in favor of Todd, and the interested witnesses produced by prosecution were admitted even though they lacked credibility. Lastly, there was no credible witness or expert opinion which proved his culpability beyond reasonable doubt. Further, the scientific report which was conclusive proof of his innocence was not considered as a valid ground for granting appeal or clemency to Todd. The breach of aforementioned golden rules of evidence law has led to execution of an innocent man on 17th of February, 2004.
The only statement I want to make is that I am an innocent man convicted of a crime I did not commit. I have been prosecuted for 12 years for something I did not do. From God's dust I came, and to dust I will return, so the earth shall become my throne.